Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Symmetrically Fit. I'm Dustin Gotro. I've got Katie Gerlinghouse and Dylan Stone with us today. Dylan Stone is on audio only today and he'll be cutting out a little bit early, but he'll be here for the first half. So, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So I'm excited about today. This is going to be a pretty cool episode. So the main things we're going to cover are the muscle imbalances associated with IT band and or hip pain. A lot of times those kind of come together. So if you've had any type of knee pain, hip pain, back pain, anything around that area, listen in today because that's the main thing we're going to be dealing with. Um, Secondary goal for today is something that we've talked about before, and that's getting back to the back pain. So, as I said before, there's going to be a lot of episodes that are going to tie back into back pain because it's such a complex issue. It's not just one size fits all kind of fix. So we've got to address it from every angle. Um, just to be clear with all of this stuff, especially with what we're talking about today, we're not diagnosing your actual issue. This is informational. We want you guys to learn. We want to educate. However, it doesn't mean that if you're listening to this and you say, hey, I have all those symptoms, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the exact problem we're talking about. Again, back pain, back injuries can be very, very complex. You may have some or all of the symptoms we're talking about and not have anything close to the muscle imbalance we're talking about. So, like I said, it's all for education. Make sure if you have any of these issues, get into a professional and get assessed so that you're getting proper care and not messing things up worse. So let's get right into it. So for Katie, if someone's experiencing IT band, hip pain, back pain, should they roll the IT band?
No. And I know a lot of people do, but the IT band is actually a big tendon. We don't want to stretch that. It's functionally meant to be short and have a good structural integrity. So rolling it is not going to change anything and it's not going to help. Yeah, no. Stop rolling the IT band.
Stop. All right.
Stop it or else Katie will get you.
Yeah, she'll come after you. So, Dylan, what I know you and I have talked about this a lot. So, what populations do you typically see these type of issues in? Um, and tell us a little more about tendon versus muscle. Why we really shouldn't be rolling the IT band.
Sure. So if y'all remember, I work in pediatrics, and so it's a little bit different where we see IT band issues. Is we see it with congenital hypotonia, or they have low tone. So that's what could cause it in children. But probably what's more pertinent to our conversation is when it happens in adults. And if you think about what an IT band does, or what the whole complex does, is it quickly moves the hip into extension. So you straighten your hip and then you externally rotate or you turn your toes out. And whenever you have any tendon that is inflamed or that is hurting, that means you did a lot of repetitive work on it. So if you think of a sport that has a lot of repetitive extension and external rotation, first thing that comes to mind is endurance runners. Anybody running, it could be anywhere from a 10K, half marathon, Ironman. That's typically where we see IT band issues and pain. That's not to say it doesn't happen other places, but if we know that you're an endurance runner, then we start thinking down the road of IT band.
Okay. So basically, what I'm hearing is I need to stop running and just not do it at all.
That's not. Have you even started running? I don't think you have. So
That we don't need to talk about that on here. That's not important.
yeah. Oh, and then the next
Um,
part. So I
all right, no running. Got it.
so, so just so you listeners know, I specifically asked to cover this topic because I love nerding out on the histology or the study of tissues. So the difference between a tendon and a muscle. First off, the tendon connects the muscle to the bone, and so that's typically what you'll see in any muscle is that there's a large muscle belly, and then there's two small tendons on each side. And so, is the background noise okay? It's kind of loud over here.
I can hear you.
Okay. So the difference in structures of the tendons and the muscles. So first is vascularity, or the blood flow to each. Some muscles typically have a lot of vessels, and um, tendons do not. So that's that's important in exercise, because when we exercise a lot, there's something called lactic acid that gets dumped into our muscles, and that's what makes us sore. That lactic acid makes us sore. So we roll out the muscle belly in order to get that lactic acid through our body and out of our system. Tendons don't have that. So tendons don't have any lactic acid that kind of dump into them to create that soreness. And then the other thing is, there's a little structure in the muscle belly that controls the tension of the muscle. So let's say if for some reason I was trying to do a bicep curl and someone came by and slapped my arm, right? So it creates a huge force that I'm not ready for. My muscle will naturally keep itself tight so that I don't hurt myself, right? Um, Tendons don't have that. So where that comes into play with rolling is that we try and play on that trick. We play a trick on that sensor to kind of get the muscle to relax. So because tendons don't have that sensor, there's no trick there, and there's no point in rolling the tendon.
All right. So, just in case it's not clear, we're saying do not roll the IT band. It's not going to do you any good. And I would even venture to say it could actually cause damage, right?
I know there's a lot of nerves running over the IT band, and so they can be sensitive. And the more you compress nerves, the more the irritation that can cause. So that is one thing I do think about if people are having pain on the side of their leg over the IT band: is are there nerves involved, and are they irritating them by continually rolling?
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I want to kind of keep this around IT band. However, I think we need to kind of set up what the real root cause of all this is. So, do you, Katie, feel like the IT band pain itself is the actual problem, or is that a symptom of a problem that we're missing?
Yeah, so usually I see that it's really it's a symptom. People feel IT band tension going down that side of the leg because it's the TFL, the tensor fasciae latae, that the IT band attaches to, which is the muscle belly for that tendon. It actually is able to do a lot of different things. It can do hip flexion, it can do external rotation, it can do extension. So it will take over for other muscles that are not doing their job. And so that's what I see happen a lot: is the IT band tension is just a symptom of something else, a deeper problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so to get into that, I want to kind of get into the details of the muscle imbalances that are associated with this, because as Katie's saying, there's a lot of different functions going on here. It's not just one simple movement that goes two directions. There's a lot of different ones, and there's more muscle tissue and more joints around the area that are involved in this muscle imbalance. So I think we need to kind of back up from, hey, my IT band hurts, to what's the actual muscle imbalance that leads to this in the first place, and then we'll kind of get into how we address it. Um, so again, just to reiterate, the IT band is not the actual problem. That's where you feel the pain manifest. The actual problem is the muscle imbalance that causes it in the first place, or muscle imbalances. So we'll kind of get into those. So we want to look at, for you, Katie, and Dylan, I want you to hop in after Katie. If somebody comes in with IT band pain or hip pain, all this type of stuff, um, what are we looking for? What muscle imbalances are we looking for that could actually fix the issue rather than just going straight at the IT band?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I look at is, I mean, hip strength all the way around, but I want to know, what is the strength of the hip flexors, iliopsoas, and what is the strength of glute med in men and the external rotators. So we've got a couple different muscle groups that we want to look at. Like I said, the TFL and the IT band will take over for those muscles if they're weak and not able to do their job. So we're looking, the deep hip external rotators, so piriformis, gemelli, quadratus femoris, and the obturator internus and externus. Piriformis is the one that gets blamed all the time, but the other ones are right there with it. So with those, we're looking at external rotation. And one way that I look at that is I will strength test those muscles and try to isolate them out and see what is your strength to resistance. The other thing we can do is look at some functional movement. So looking at something like a squat tells us a lot about how well those muscles are moving, activating, and are they able to do their job, or is the TFL and IT band doing most of the work?
All right, Dylan. Since you work with pediatrics, are you seeing the same types of muscle imbalances in these situations, or are you seeing something a little different?
Yeah, so it's I'd say yes and no in terms of the pediatric population, because they have congenital weakness or congenital low tone, which means the whole body is I guess, for lack of a better term, is flabby. None of the muscles are working the way that they should, and so you could say all the muscles are imbalanced, or you could actually say they're all balanced but they're weak.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's not as clear cut in pediatrics. So what we do is we do just a visual screening and assessment of these muscles. But if I know a certain diagnosis going in, and I know, oh man, they're going to be real weak, just all over with this, then it's generally more about general strengthening, which is, you don't ever hear a kid talking about IT band pain because they're all pretty well balanced. But that's why it's definitely more of like an adult orthopedic issue. But I do still see some of the effects of having a weak glute or a weak hip adductor, or bringing the hip out with the knees coming in like that. But I approach it differently because I'm in pediatrics.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here. I want to kind of zone in on the knees diving in issue. This is so. So this is what we're talking about for those of you that aren't familiar with this issue. You'll typically see it in a squat. The knees will dive in. You'll see that internal rotation where that quad's basically rotating inward. Um, this issue, we're going to spend some time on this one because this is a very, very big debate in the fitness industry, and has been for many, many years, whether or not we should fix this or it's natural. There's more power production from this position. So we're going to kind of go through our opinions here with our experience, and talk a little bit about some other people in the industry that have addressed this issue. So um, let's get straight into if we want to correct it. So, Katie, do we always want to correct the knees diving in, or not?
Yeah, so there are times where you might not want to. One of those times would be just based on the activity that they're doing. If we're looking at a basic squat, I'm probably going to correct that more than someone who's lifting really heavy. And I know we're going to get into that in a minute, but um, another time would be based on the anatomy of the hip for that person. So actually, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see if I can pull up this one so y'all can see. So the hip joint, so here if we're looking at the hip from above, you got the hip socket, or the hip ball in the socket that it's sitting in. So this first one on the left, that is normal, where that's a normal angle of the hip, the femur going into the hip socket, the acetabulum. Then if you look at this next one in the middle, you've got a little bit of excessive anteversion. So here that angle changes, and that's going to turn the toes in. So this might be something like they walk with their toes in. And that might be a hip weakness problem, or it might be a structural problem where their joint is just shaped a little bit differently. And I'm not going to change that because I can't change the hip. Like I can't change those bones short of breaking them. And we don't really need or want to do that. So you've got that anaversion. And then on the last picture on the right, you've got retroversion. So this creates a little different angle, the opposite direction. So the toes are now going to point out. And it may be on one side, it may be on both sides, but same thing. This could be coming from a hip muscle imbalance, or this could be coming from a structural problem. And in the clinic, we test these to see what is happening and where is the problem coming from so that we can decide if we want to change their mechanics when they squat or do lunges or any kind of movement um, for these where the knee would be dropping in. So with that anaversion, the excess anaversion, their toes are in. That is where their hip wants to be. That is the best position for their hip. So they might actually have their knees come in a little bit more than someone with a normal anteversion. There is a range of normal. It's not all the same amount, but that excessive anteversion might be a time where we let someone's knees drop in a little bit more than somebody else.
All right. Can y'all still hear me all right?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. My internet cut out. That storm is getting bad.
It is, yeah, coming through.
Yeah.
So, and I know like my patient population, like I do work with some runners, but I'm not typically not working with really heavy weightlifters. So, Dustin, like, what are your thoughts? Where do you see this happening, and when do you correct it in the gym?
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. So what's interesting though is hearing you talk about the structure of everything. I think that's important for people to see and hear because it's not as dry cut as I think a lot of people in the industry feel like. Well, if the knees come in, we got to fix it. That's not always the case, and you've taught me that, and it's interesting to see that we got to be a little more careful about making sure the muscle imbalances are actually what's causing it, and it's not just the structure of their body. So that's really interesting. The place I have seen it the most is back in when we owned CrossFits, and CrossFit got really heavy into Olympic lifting, and we actually got into Olympic lifting and working with competitors. I don't know that I've ever seen an Olympic lifter that we worked with in person that didn't have their knees diving in. And there's people all over the industry debating about this. I think a lot of Olympic lifters and Olympic lifting coaches, in fact, I know because we've had arguments. um, their argument to this is if the knees are naturally diving in on a heavy squat, if you try and resist it, then you're taking away power from the muscles that help you recover from the squat. Now, it's not super dry cut. I agree with that to a certain extent. If you're just flat out not going to fix the muscle imbalance, then yeah, you'll probably have a little bit more power coming out of the squat in that situation. However, I don't agree with doing that. I think the muscle imbalances need to be fixed. And I fully believe if you fix it and start squatting with the knees out over the toes where they should be, in line with the hips and toes, you're going to have a lot more power coming out of the bottom of your squat. So I feel like it's one of those things where people just don't want to put the work in because it's not as fun as going in the gym and lifting as heavy as you can. That's what I've seen a lot of is just people being really stubborn and not wanting to put in the work. Now I want to reference. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to reference a an article here that.
While you're looking that up,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, when you're looking that pulling that up, um, how many, and maybe like just general idea of how many weightlifters have knee pain? Is it really, really common?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, a lot of them actually wear the compression knee sleeves again because they don't want to put in the work to fix it, and so they end up just wearing those compression knee sleeves to kind of get away with it. So yeah, super
Yeah. And
duper
that's what I'm
common.
thinking. Like, if you come back and you change the hip position, that changes the knee position. That puts that knee in a better um, biomechanical advantage, and you have less stress on the ligaments. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Go
Absolutely.
ahead.
Um, Dylan, I know you're going to be cutting out in a minute, or did he already cut out?
I think he did.
I don't see him. Okay, never mind then.
Yep.
All right, so listeners, I want you guys to check out this article. So this is from Catalyst Athletics. Greg Everett and his wife were super big time Olympic lifters, competed professionally. Now they train tons of professional athletes. I have been to a seminar and met these guys and got to know them, got to talk to them, and I can tell you these are the top guys in this industry as far as moving properly in Olympic lifting goes. I've seen their lifters lift, I've seen them lift, and so I want you guys to check out his website, catalystathletics.com. Check him out on Instagram, Catalyst Athletics. What you'll notice, and this is even if you're not interested in Olympic lifting, it's still very interesting because most Olympic lifters are going to dive the knees in. Some of them intentionally, some of them just don't worry about fixing it. What I like about this article is he goes through, and I'm not going to read the article to you guys, but he goes through kind of what he's looking for. So, this what we want section, what he's looking for in a squat with his athletes. And what I like about his concept is it's very similar to ours. He does not go along with, well, the knees just dive in, so we're just going to leave them there with his lifters. And again, this guy's training really high level lifters. He is all for trying to fix it. However, he does accept the fact that, and I do agree with this, with most people that have knees that dive in, it's always going to be there a little bit. It's something that you'll probably never fully fix as far as when you put a massive amount of load on top of your body. So when you're squatting your maximum weight, they're probably still going to dive in. What I like about what Greg talks about here is he wants to fix it as much as possible, get them in as good alignment as possible, and train that way. But he accepts that when they go for a meet, the knees are going to dive in a little bit. These athletes are super high level. They know the risk there. So even though it's not, from a corrective standpoint, it's not the best thing in the world, he's at least trying to fix it as much as he possibly can with an athlete that has a task to do that's going to make it worse. And I think that's really cool to see somebody at his level to be kind of fighting against the industry in this, because it's a big problem, and you see a lot of Olympic lifters getting hurt because they don't think this way. And you'll see, like, if you look on his Instagram, you'll see most of his lifters are going to be in this position where that knee is in line with the toes and hips. That's very rare to see in high level lifters. Now, again, he does understand that they're going to dive in under mass amounts of load. So you're going to see some with their knees diving in, but in general, these guys lifters, their squats are unbelievable. It's really impressive. So I think it's really interesting. Check that website out. Check out his Instagram. There's some really good information. These guys, they're absolute geniuses when it comes to this whole idea of kind of infusing corrective exercise into a high level sport that before them, I don't feel like anybody really cared about correcting people's movements. It was all about just putting as much weight up as you could. So, Katie, have you worked with any heavy lifters?
I mean, we do get some like CrossFit athletes, but nobody that's trying to compete.
Yeah.
It's usually moms who just want to go back and they want to work out, and that's their chosen activity for exercise.
Yeah. All right. I have to put this in there, and I'm not bashing CrossFit. I'm going to behave myself, but I'm just curious with patients you have come in from CrossFit. What do you typically see with them as far as muscle imbalances?
Oh, I mean, it's totally all over the place, but I will say that most people still have glute weakness and hip flexor weakness. And I said glute med in men, maybe not glute max as much, but glute med in men, they might have hip external rotator weakness. That just kind of depends. Um, but so many people have gotten really good at compensating, and so they can still do the workouts, but they're coming to me because they're having pain. So we got to change the way that they're doing them so that they can continue to work out while changing that motor pattern.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's all I'm saying about that. I'm going to behave. Okay. So we've kind of covered there's some situations where we want to fix the knees diving in, some situations where we don't. So in a situation where I have a client or a patient that knees are excessively diving in, we've examined, we've kind of pinpointed, okay, there are muscle imbalances that are putting them in this position. Give us a brief explanation of what muscles we're dealing with that need to be addressed to fix the knees diving in issue.
Yeah, so like I said, the very first thing I want to look at is hip external rotators. So the deeper ones. So the piriformis, um, obturator internus and externus, superior and inferior gemelli, and the quadratus femoris. So these muscles sit really close to the hip joint, and all their whole job is to turn your toe out. Right, that is the major function. They also work to stabilize the hip when you are standing on one leg, if you're in a lunge or jumping, running, all of those single leg activities, they do even more work because they're on one leg. But with a squat, they're doing it just as much. So we want to make sure that those are really strong, engaging throughout that motion, going down in the squat, up in the squat, throughout the lunge, any activity. The next one that I want to look at is glute med in men. So they do a little bit of hip external rotation, a little bit of internal rotation, but their primary job is to abduct. So to bring, if your legs are here, to bring your foot away from your other foot, right? And so that's the same thing if we think about it, because we don't often do this, right? Like we don't stand and on one leg, like kick one leg out to the side. We use that muscle to really hold us up when we are standing on one leg or right with any activity. So walking, stairs, even a lunge, jumping, anything on one leg, you really need the glute med to provide you stability there. And then the hip flexors are our last one. So that's the one they lift your knee up towards your chest. So we want to make sure that those are strong and engaging at the right times as well. With that, I see a lot of core weakness, so I'm almost always addressing core. If the core is not working and the lumbar spine is not in an optimal position, then the hip is not going to do what it's supposed to do. The hip flexors can't do their job. Glute med, external rotators can't do their job. So we're going to look at all of those things, and for almost everyone, we're strengthening. Rarely am I stretching most of those. There are times where the hip flexors might be short, but I'm going to measure that to make sure that it is really short before I stretch it. If there's more tension, I might roll, I might do some soft tissue work. I would approach that in a little bit different way. But the kind of on this note of like, we don't need to stretch everything, we don't need to roll everything. Most of the people rolling their piriformis with a tennis ball or the foam roller or anything like that don't really have a short, tight piriformis either. They have a weak piriformis that feels short and tight because it's lengthened and underperforming. It doesn't have enough strength and tissue tension to be able to do its job, so it always feels tight. So most of the time with this, I am strengthening everything around the hip and the core. Every once in a while, I will see like hip flexor weakness or a hip flexor being short, and I'm going to measure that and strengthen that. Some people might have other things, but I'm going to check and see if they really are short. But usually, if there's something, it's going to be hip flexor.
All right. So again, it's not just one or two muscles. There's a lot going on here. So let's say someone after hearing this podcast, they notice their knees are diving in, that they've never really thought about it before. If someone runs into that issue, but they're not sure if it's something that they need to actually correct or if it's just the way their body's built, how do they, where do they go? How do they reach out for help for that?
Yeah, so I will say one thing, super easy thing you can do on your own, even before you call someone, is just like step in place and let your feet fall where they fall and see if your toes are always pointed in or they're always turned out. If you're doing a squat, try some different positions and see what feels more comfortable to your hips, just as a starting point to kind of test some things out. And then give us a call. You can reach me at 214-600-8168. Like I said, if I'm not the right person for you, I will help you find someone. But we're going to look at everything all together and figure out what we can do to get you moving better. But I would say call physical therapy, and find a good trainer that is aware of these things so that they can help you try out some different things, look at those muscle imbalances, strengthen the weak muscles. But then also, if it's something that they like, it needs more assessment, then they'll get you to the right person to do a little bit more testing.
All right. Very good. So, just kind of in summary for everybody, don't roll the IT ban. I can't say that enough. I've been seeing it for almost 20 years now, and I still see people doing it. Stop doing that. If you're unsure about the alignment of your knees, anything we talked about today, reach out to one of us. If you're in the area, obviously you can come see us. If not, we can at least send you in the right direction to the right professional that can help assess everything and help you fix it, and hopefully avoid some injuries. Don't forget, guys, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And thank you for joining today's episode of Symmetrically Fit. Thank you for all the continued support, especially in the early stages of this podcast. It really means a lot. It's been really cool to see everybody out there supporting what we're doing. Until next time, y'all stay healthy. Take care.